Pakistan's Foreign Office on Monday categorically denied Indian media reports alleging that nuclear-capable Shaheen missiles were used during recent cross-border tensions. FO spokesperson Shafkat Ali Khan called the claims baseless, adding that video evidence shared by Indian outlets had since been removed by the Indian Army. He said the narrative was part of a disinformation campaign to deflect from India's failures during Operation Sindoor. Military spokesperson Lieutenant Gen Ahmed Sharif Chaudhry reaffirmed that Pakistan would not bow to Indian hegemony and warned against provocative tactics that risk regional instability. As the ceasefire between the two nuclear-armed neighbors continues to hold, Deputy PM and Foreign Minister 𝐒𝐭𝐲𝐬𝐬 arrived in Beijing for a three-day visit to discuss regional stability with Chinese leaders. He emphasized China's support during recent tensions and reaffirmed the importance of the bilateral relationship, including CPEC cooperation. Meanwhile, Pakistan's stock market responded positively to the de-escalation, with the 𝐾SE 100 index briefly crossing 120,000 points in intraday trading. Investors were buoyed by IMF program approvals, improved macroeconomic indicators, and reduced war risk. Analysts expect sustained momentum, pending the upcoming federal budget. Officials confirmed that the Pakistan-India ceasefire, brokered through U.S. diplomacy, has no expiry date. Both sides' DGMOs agreed to phased troop reductions along the border and regular contact to de-escalate future tensions. While Pakistan remains optimistic about using the truce as a basis for broader talks, including Kashmir and water rights, India's leadership has described the ceasefire as only a temporary pause. Pakistan also warned against India's suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty, calling any attempt to restrict water flow an act of aggression. Elsewhere, Senate Chairman Yousef Raza Gilani represented Pakistan at the inaugural Mass of Pope Leo XIV in Rome, affirming Pakistan's commitment to interfaith harmony. The UK Parliament also called for renewed talks on Kashmir and greater human rights oversight. Amid this easing of hostilities, Sikh leaders in India urged reopening the Kartarpur corridor, while India allowed Afghan freight to pass through Wagah, signaling tentative steps toward normalization. In Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to control the entire territory despite mounting international pressure. Speaking on Monday, Netanyahu affirmed that Israel would achieve complete victory, targeting Hamas militants while also addressing the ongoing humanitarian crisis. While Israel escalates its military operations in Gaza, including airstrikes and ground assaults under Operation Gideon's Chariots, humanitarian aid has begun to flow into Gaza after intense global pressure. Limited shipments of food, such as flour and baby food, are entering the besieged enclave, but the situation remains dire, with warnings of famine looming. The violence has continued unabated, with over 500 Palestinians killed in the past week alone as Israeli airstrikes hit 160 targets across Gaza. Netanyahu's government remains divided on the issue of aid, with far-right factions urging the blockade to remain intact, fearing it may strengthen Hamas. Meanwhile, a new round of indirect talks between Israel and Hamas, mediated in Qatar, has yielded no progress, further escalating the sense of frustration on both sides. In a separate development, Iran-US nuclear talks have reached a standstill, with Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Majid Takhtravanchi insisting Tehran will not back down from its uranium enrichment program, a stance that has deepened the divide between the two nations. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff reiterated Washington's demand for Iran to halt enrichment entirely, a condition Tehran has categorically rejected. The ongoing impasse is expected to be addressed in a fifth round of talks scheduled for this weekend in Rome. Meanwhile, tensions between the UK and Iran escalated as Britain summoned the Iranian ambassador over the charges brought against 3 Iranian nationals involved in a counterterrorism investigation. The UK government emphasized its commitment to national security and accountability, marking a further point of friction in the strained relations between the two countries. As the war in Ukraine grinds on with no clear resolution in sight, diplomatic efforts continue alongside military escalations and deepening international involvement. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Rome during the inauguration of Pope Leo. Zelensky described the meeting as good, reaffirming Ukraine's commitment to real diplomacy and an unconditional ceasefire. Despite a rare round of direct talks between Ukraine and Russia, the first in over 3 years, no ceasefire was reached. Kyiv rejected Moscow's demands as non-starters, though both sides agreed to a substantial prisoner swap involving 1,000 detainees each. Meanwhile, Poland's customs agency intercepted a shipment of 5 metric tons of aircraft tires disguised as car tires. The goods were en route through Belarus and Russia, violating EU sanctions aimed at restricting materials that could bolster Russia's aviation sector. A criminal investigation into customs fraud is now underway. In a continued crackdown on dissent and foreign influence, Russia's prosecutor general declared Amnesty International an undesirable organization, accusing it of supporting Ukrainian forces and promoting anti-Russian narratives. The global human rights organization has yet to respond, but the move underscores Moscow's tightening grip on civil society amid wartime censorship and heightened nationalism. On the support front, Finland announced a significant new aid package to Ukraine, pledging €90 million, $101 million, worth of ammunition. The funding comes from profits generated by frozen Russian central bank assets held across the European Union, totaling around €210 billion. Finnish Defense Minister Antti Häkkänen highlighted the dual advantage of the move, strengthening Ukraine's defense while supporting domestic arms production. Moscow has not officially responded but has consistently condemned the seizure and repurposing of its frozen assets, calling the measures unlawful and warning of potential legal retaliation. As battlefield tensions rise and diplomacy teeters, these developments illustrate a conflict that continues to sprawl across borders, militarily, economically, and politically, with no end yet in sight.